House.
I call
Speaker.
Dr. Order, please. I'm calling Dr. Kennedy Graham 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I presume that our national colleagues are free to select their own pronouns between the adjectives and the nouns that they're given. I want to just mention three points in this third reading. The first point is that this debate yesterday and today essentially marks, I think, a new start. Hopefully, certainly it does. We're lost if it doesn't. But let us assume that this marks the start of a new phase. Taking from Paris Agreement, which reflects a new global approach to climate policy, the focus has switched now from universality established in Paris in December to domestic action. And the challenge now for all 196 states parties is the domestic action. So let us regard this budget and the bill that's in front of us as the beginning of that domestic action to implement the new universality that comes out of Paris. And the work starts now. And I pick up on Dennis O'Rourke's point. We've been making it, James Shaw and I and Labor colleagues, of the need for a consensus. We are genuine about that. We will dialogue, we will listen, but we will make our points. And on our part, the Green Party, where we differ, as I think Mr. Simpson said, is in sense of urgency. And I promise you, we will convey the reasons for the greater sense of urgency on our part in that dialogue, but let the dialogue begin. Quickly, in response to Mr. O'Rourke about agricultural competitiveness and the need to go carefully, of course we take the point. Just respond with the fact that competitiveness works both ways, with the opportunity cost, the omission of the counterfactual that was there in the lead up to New Zealand's INDC. It's the same with agriculture. If we don't move, including on agriculture, we lose our competitiveness in the medium term, if not the short term. So we've got to move on agriculture as well. And maybe New Zealand First are aware of the 2013 FAO report that said Oceania can reduce agricultural emissions, livestock emissions by 14 to 70%. Maybe New Zealand First are aware of last week's global report that says global agricultural emissions can drop from 5 gigatons to 4 gigatons by 2030. But let's find out. We'll have a dialogue and see whether they're aware of the double side of the competitiveness argument. So Paris is the real test. We now move to domestic action. What does that mean for us? It means institutional change. It means that we do need to emulate the British. We need an independent climate commission that can talk independently of politics, independently of the politicians and party views, composed of experts and well-recognised authorities who can speak with authority to the government and to Parliament. Let's establish that. Let's establish a forum, not unlike the Land and Water Forum, but taking into account the lessons learned from that, and involve business and civil society that, again, is independent of Parliament. Let's have those two institutions set up now and moving fast. Let us think about reforming even our own parliamentary structure on climate change. Climate change is an orphan because it is cross-sectoral, and it doesn't sit nicely. It doesn't sit nicely. I need another minute, Mr. Speaker, as a result of that. It doesn't sit nicely in the committee structure. So we need to look at that. The transformational pathway that we need to focus on will begin with a new recognition of our national responsibility level, dividing the global carbon budget up according to the principles of equity, to finding out what we are actually responsible for, as opposed to the second point, which is what are we capable of in terms of domestic mitigation. They are blurred, those two concepts, and quite often deliberately so by governments. We need to be at least intellectually honest and politically honest and recognise the distinction between those two concepts. And that takes us then, once we know what our national responsibility level is and our domestic mitigation potential is, then we move to what the effective policies are and let that discussion begin. Thank you.
I call